OBR Straight Talk, Episode 3. Best start since 2004.
Welcome back, everybody, to the third episode of OBR Straight Talk. I am Bob Evans. He's Scott Kennison. And guess what, people? It's not a Victory Monday, but you know what? It's not sadness. It's not a loss either. We are recording the first ever podcast where the Cleveland Browns did not lose a game, and we get to talk about it. Woo! We didn't lose! We didn't lose! We didn't lose! 0-16, no more! That is right, Browns fans. Hugh Jackson cannot repeat going 0-16 as the Cleveland Browns tied the Pittsburgh Steelers 21-21 after a long, hard-fought battle of 60 minutes of rain-soaked regulation for those of us that were cheering it on in the stadium, and then another 10 minutes of overtime in which the Browns failed to capitalize on many mistakes and many opportunities to win this game against their longtime foe. And you know, we've got a big podcast for you today. We decided to take things a little bit of a different direction this week. We've had great guests in Jake Burns and Brent Sobleski of Bleacher Report and of the OBR, but this week we decided to go no guests, so you get a full maybe hour of unfiltered Scott and Bob today. And before we even get into any type of agenda, you know what we're talking about. You know we're talking Browns Steelers, and I want to start off the show this week by just giving Scott the opportunity to give us his opening thoughts on the game, because we've been talking before we started recording, and he's got a lot to say, and he's got some things that he's pretty upset about. So Scott, take it away.
Let's start with the moment, the play of the game. Everything in this game comes down to one moment with 23 seconds left. Tyrod Taylor takes the snap, sees the Mike linebacker vacate, and everyone vacate the middle of the field, forcing the one high safety to stay frozen as Landry is streaking on a post to the middle of the field. He also sees that he has Josh Gordon in one-on-one coverage and has beat the fourth string bum cornerback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Bumrod Taylor floats a jump ball up that is so short of Josh Gordon that the fourth string cornerback happens to catch up and take the ball away. I'm sitting in my living room. I see that Josh Gordon has beat the cornerback. I see that Taylor decides, yes, this is where I'm going to throw the ball. And I jumped up in the air and yelled, yes, no, because it was a terrible throw. And I thought this was as bad as it gets because, I mean, you can see it in your literally armchair quarterbacking. Just throw the ball out there and let the freakiest athlete in the field, on a field that includes Antonio Brown, go get the ball and win you a game. There's 26 seconds left. Get it out in front of him. Let him make a play. Let him go win the game. But then I read Tyrod's post-game description of why he threw that ball the way he did. And it just gets worse. And it's one of those things that I can't even explain this, because now it makes me wonder if the man has the basic competence to play quarterback. He says, me and Josh were on two different pages, but I take the blame for that. I could have put it down the field a little bit more. I was trying to give him something that he could go up and jump for. Just have to get better at that. No, dumbass. He's beat the cornerback. There is no safety help. The safety is frozen in the middle of the field by a beautifully designed play by Todd Haley to make them choose their poison. And you decided to throw a jump ball. The only thing a jump ball does there is not let Josh have a chance to go get a play. It lets the cornerback do exactly what he did, which is catch up when he's smoked by the superior athlete. Throw the ball out in front. Josh will catch it in stride, or nobody will catch it. And the Browns will go on to win the game, or you'll have another chance to make another play. But you know what your other option was? If we go all the way back to the beginning, read the play instead of locking on to your first read of Josh Gordon and waiting to see if he's open. Read if the linebackers vacated the middle, because you as the quarterback know where Landry's route's running. And if you see a safety 25 yards off and you see everyone in the middle of the field vacate, then you know 5 yards out that you hit Landry over the top. And if you go watch that play and freeze frame it, yeah, Landry's going to get popped, but it's guaranteed down to about the 30-yard line. Instead, you didn't read that. But the read you did make is still okay, because Josh Gordon has completely crapped on the defensive back and is about to walk in untouched for a game-winning touchdown, and you decide to throw a jump ball? Did you get hit in the head? You did get hit in the head early in that game. Were you playing with a concussion? That was some of the worst decision making I've seen a quarterback ever make. I think Deshaun Kaiser might have been able to throw that pass for a touchdown. Johnny Manziel, out of his mind on heroin, might have completed that pass for a touchdown. And Tyrod Taylor, the efficient, smart, effective quarterback, can't read that play out. If you can't read that play out and you can't make that decision, you can't play quarterback in the NFL.
Well, all right then. I guess Tyrod Taylor really, drew the ire of you in this one. So let's go ahead and start with Tyrod because I've got a lot of thoughts. I rewatched the game today because, I had a couple of adult beverages yesterday and was down there, partying it up out on West 6th Street and hanging out with my good friends in the dog pound. So let's start with Tyrod Taylor. So in fan mode, under the influence of alcohol, I was not a fan of what I was seeing during the game. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was trying to chalk it up to the offensive line shuffle and the weather and getting used to playing with everybody because you have to remember, aside from that one drive against the Giants, the rest of the first team offense did not look good the entire preseason, and they didn't spend much time together, especially without Josh Gordon, who just came back. So it's basically a whole new unit working together. So let's start with the stats. Tyrod finished the game 15 of 40. For 197 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He ran the ball 8 times for 77 and a touchdown. So overall, you hear that? 15 to 40 is atrocious. Now, maybe you give him a 5 completion bump for rain. Call it rain. Njoku had some drops. So, but even if you bump it up to, say, 20 of 40, 50% completion in your first game as Cleveland Brown, not great. And he was actually 15 of 40. So not very good. So as I went back and I rewatched the game, I broke it down. Obviously it's not the all 22 yet. That's not available on NFL Game Pass. But it was the condensed version of the game, without all the commercials and everything. So one thing continuously stuck out to me over and over again, and I tweeted about it a little bit ago. Tyrod Taylor does not seem to me like the correct quarterback to run Todd Haley's offense. And there's a couple of reasons why. One of them you just hit on. That play against Josh Gordon there with the option or the opportunity, whatever you want to call it, to win the game. Instead, Tyrod said that they weren't communicating correctly. That's an issue to me because here's the thing: when that ball was snapped, there's 23 seconds left on the clock and there's no timeouts, none. And so in Tyrod's mind, he's saying that him and Josh weren't on the same page, which to me leads me to believe that he thought throwing the ball up toward the sideline right there was the proper play. But when you look at the way that play worked out, he threw the ball short on the inside of the field, not on the outside of the field near the sideline. So say Josh Gordon goes up and actually gets that jump ball and makes that catch. He's likely getting tackled in the field of play roughly 30 yards from the line of scrimmage, 25, 30 yards from the line of scrimmage. So he makes the catch. If he does not somehow find a way to get out of bounds, he's being tackled in the field of play with about 13 seconds left, and now your entire line needs to sprint down the field and spike the ball and get on the ball in 13 seconds. It's going to be very, very, very close for you to actually execute that and get the field goal team out there. To me, when I see the wide receiver and Josh Gordon running full speed down the field and the DB underneath him, I don't care what the design play call was. As a quarterback, you need to look up and see, oh, shit, Josh Gordon is running down the field with the DB in front of him. I need to throw this ball out in front of Josh and let him go get it. That's problem A. So there's miscommunication, and Tyrod, he owned it, so good for him on that. There's miscommunication on where the ball...
He half owned it, though, because he said we're not on the same page. Tyrod, you're not on the same page with any wide receiver that's ever played the game. There is no wide receiver who thinks, I have my man beat by a step and a half and I'm separating because I own him, and I'm going to wait for my quarterback to underthrow a jump ball. Josh Gordon is never going to be in position to come back and fight for that ball.
All right, let me finish here. Because I agree with you. So when you process the rest of the play, it goes back to the entire issue I have with Tyrod Taylor while watching this football game. Like you mentioned, if he comes off of Josh Gordon and just even scans for a split second that Jarvis Landry is coming open in the middle of the field, his read should go to Landry because a field goal wins this game. You don't need a touchdown. So the read comes over, number 42, I think it is, is underneath. He's running the other direction. And the guy the safety in the middle of the field that's responsible for Landry is too far behind that if you can drop a bucket pass over the top of 42, I think it was, right there in the middle of the field, Landry's going to catch the ball, probably be down around the I thought it was like the 20-25 yard line. Maybe it was a little
the
further
30,
than that.
maybe.
No, I think it was further than that. I think it was like the 25. He would have been down.
It depends when he throws it. He'd have been in the 25 to 30, somewhere in that range.
So in that instance, then you can get on the ball. You can spike it with probably about 6-7 seconds left, and then you're going to try and kick a 42, 43 yarder for the win. That I get it. I get Tyrod's wanting to throw the ball up and have Josh go make a play. All you need is a field goal there. And this goes back to my biggest issue with Tyrod Taylor in this entire game when I was breaking it down over and over and over again. Tyrod Taylor, and this is not a knock at him, the human being or the quarterback. This is just who he is and why likely the Buffalo Bills decided to move on from him and try to go. I mean, they drafted Josh Allen. That's a whole different conversation. But try to find a guy with higher upside because Tyrod Taylor is who Tyrod Taylor is. He's an athletic quarterback who can make plays. He can extend plays with his legs. He can get out on the edge. He can put the ball on receivers when he sees them open. He's not the guy that's going to make split-second decisions and get the ball out of his hands quickly and go through progressions in a quick manner. That is not Tyrod Taylor. And that is what I saw this entire game with Todd Haley, is that Todd Haley's offense is ball out quickly, ball out quickly. I mean, you saw it so many times because they'd run these plays where it was a play action or a read play, and the pass would immediately go to the right side, or it'd be like a quick boot action to the right, and there would be nobody even anywhere near in a blocking set to take the guy off the edge. So to me, that says that ball's designed to be out quickly, like 1 second, 2 seconds, right? It's got to be out of the hands. But Tyrod, instead of quickly turning, getting the ball out of his hands, locating the guy, or remembering where the guy's supposed to be, he would run further over, and then that guy's in his face, and now he's throwing a bad pass, and you saw it a number of times where the ball was at Duke's feet. The ball was at the tight end's feet. It was just out low and outside, and people are like, oh, well, that's because the offensive line's not blocking, and it's like, no, you got to go back and watch that play, because that right there embodies to me the fact that Baker Mayfield, and I'm not calling for Mayfield to be in right now. I'm not saying it's time to make a switch. I'm just saying that when the switch ultimately happens this year, it will not be because the Browns said hastily, we need to go to the number 1 overall quarterback. It's all downhill from here. No, they're going to eventually realize that Baker Mayfield is the right quarterback for what Todd Haley wants to do, and Tyrod Taylor is not.
Tyrod Taylor, you said it, he is who he is. And I'm not calling for Tyrod Taylor to be benched. I also said on Twitter after the game, and I stand by this, he's not going to be this bad every week. He can't be this bad every week. He is a career 500 quarterback in the NFL. I know I finished off my opening rant by saying if you can't make that play, you can't play quarterback in the NFL. Tyrod Taylor can make that play. I don't know if his brain just kind of stalled into neutral there and he just had a freak out and just didn't realize that Josh Gordon had him beat, or he saw a ghost safety playing over the top. I don't know what it was. He can't be this bad every week. But this is also part of what you get from him. You will get this out of him. You will see this, and there'll be days where he just frustrates you and you want to throw something through your TV because he's holding the ball too long, or because he's got a lot of Brandon Weeden in him, where he waits on his first read until his first read comes open, or he sees his first read isn't going to come open and he either checks it down or tries to make something out of it by running the football. Tyrod Taylor played with a lot of heart, okay? That first touchdown he got where he put his head down and just went straight through the defensive back, gotta love that play. I mean, that's blue-collar football. There's a lot of stuff where you can't question Tyrod Taylor's heart. You can't question his integrity, his intensity. He's probably a leader. He's probably a guy people want to play for. But he's also a guy who doesn't see it until he sees it. And that's something that's not a knock on someone's intelligence. Some people are intuitive and they think at a faster clock speed. That has nothing to do with how smart you are overall. It's just some people need a couple extra seconds to see something and process it, and some people process it intuitively before their conscious mind catches up. And Tyrod Taylor, like Brandon Weeden, is one of those guys who doesn't process it intuitively. Like Deshaun Kaiser doesn't process it intuitively. He sees it when he sees it. And that's part of who Tyrod is. That being said, if you get him into a defense that's much more zone, He seems probably to do better because there's wide open spaces that his receiver can be running to. And he can find those spots in the zone and scan for them. Tyrod was atrocious. Tyrod was god-awful. And I think the running game for a long point was god-awful too. And the running game has to be better. You charted this game out. How long did it get? They didn't approach balance. I think they had something like 32 running plays total that were designed. Then, I think you had total 40 running plays, but 8 of those were undesigned runs by Tyrod Taylor. I didn't chart this game, but it seemed to me in the first half that we were very unbalanced. I want to say in the first 11 or 12 plays, only 2 of them were running plays. And one of them was obviously a running play. And a lot of times when you were running the ball, you were telegraphing that you were running the ball. The one drive that the offense had that was sustained that looked good was powered on Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb running the ball. You didn't commit to the run until the second half. And I don't understand why in a game where the elements were a factor and your quarterback is Tyrod Taylor, you were pass dominant. I'd add that question for Todd Haley.
So to go back real quick, because I want to finish up on Tyrod. So the biggest thing with Tyrod, and it's directly with what you just asked, and I'll get into where I charted the game there. Tyrod in his career, the most passes he's ever thrown in a season, I've talked about it ad nauseum at this point, was 436. And that was in 15 game season. So that's an average of 29 per game, right? Tyrod Taylor threw the ball 40 times in a rain-soaked environment. Granted, they were down, so they had to throw the ball. But somebody could perceive this and say they had to throw the ball more because they were down. But here, this goes right to what you were just asking me, right? So I charted the game. Browns' first possession. Pass, which ended up being a Tyrod run, but it was a pass call. Pass. False start, pass, run, pass, punt. We're in the rain, and the design play calls were pass, run, pass. So you're at 5-1 there before the punt. Second possession. Pass, punt. We're still talking about in the rain here. We've now thrown the ball 9 times and ran the ball 1 designed run, which one of those pass plays ended up being a scramble. Possession 3. Run, false start, pass, punt. So it took them until their third possession, until they're like, hey, you know what? This whole passing it 9 out of 10 times on the first 2 possessions is not going to work. And this goes back real quick. This just goes back to everything at Buffalo. So you mentioned earlier, Tyrod Taylor was a 500 quarterback, right? Buffalo, in his first 2 seasons there, Greg Roman was their offensive coordinator. Greg Roman, the architect of those San Francisco offenses where they ran heavy. They had Kaepernick running the ball, and they had, I think those were Hyde's early years, but they also had Frank Gore. So a run-first offense. And then last year, I forget who their offensive coordinator was, but still, again, it was give the ball to LaShawn McCoy. Everything starts with LaShawn McCoy. Get boot action out on the edge. Limit Tyrod Taylor's passes. And this isn't a shot on Tyrod Taylor. This is just who Tyrod Taylor is as a quarterback. You want to limit the amount of complex decisions that Tyrod Taylor has to make. And this is why he doesn't get a lot of interceptions, because the whole point is to low risk, high probability, high success rate, whatever you want to call it, passes. You don't want him to have to go through multiple progressions, because we saw it in game 1. It just wasn't there. A lot of people were asking the question, was it a separation problem? Was it the Browns receivers just can't separate with the corners? I won't be able to tell you that until I can see the actual all 22 and see that. But I can tell you that there were numbers of times over and over again in my charting that it was Tyrod's locked onto this guy who's obviously covered, and there's 2 guys open underneath, but he's still looking at that guy from the snap. So to me, yes, there may have been separation issues, but more than anything, it was Tyrod's waiting for that first read to come open, and if not, then he instantly looks to his check down, and he's not looking at a second progressed receiver on maybe the opposite side of the field or coming across the middle to see them open.
And maybe Todd Haley learned this. I mean, you've been the offensive coordinator for Ben Roethlisberger now for quite some time. It might take you a second to realize that not everybody can do what Ben Roethlisberger can do. And he might have to adjust what he's going to do from here and simplify some of these concepts, because, boy, that play he designed on the interception for Josh Gordon, that was a beautiful play. You put the Steelers' balls in a vice on that play. I mean, you had to be salivating into Todd Haley, and you saw them line up in 1 high safety. You had to sit there and think that you yourself, Todd Haley, might be able to complete the pass. Because, I mean, That's the perfect defense that you want to see them run for that play that you called. Like if you knew they were going to run one high safety and man coverage, you would have called that play. Because Landry freezes the safety and gives you Josh Gordon one-on-one, or Landry in the gap between the linebackers that are dropping that can't cover him and the safety who can't get there in time. You've given the easiest play decision to your quarterback you can when that defense is what's out there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
In the NFL, the first 10 or 15 plays are scripted.
Very scripted, yes.
Very scripted. So you made a conscious decision, knowing what the elements were going to be. And actually at that time having a forecast that it was going to be far worse than those elements ended up being, to come out and throw the ball 9 out of 10 times to start the game.
Listen, I mean, when we recorded the podcast the other day, our second episode, I told you, barring rain, the way to beat the Steelers was going to be throwing the ball and attacking the secondary. But I said that was dependent on the weather forecast, and you got out there, and it didn't end up being a monsoon, but it was still heavy rain to me, we were sitting there in the stadium, and everybody is just looking at each other like, okay, when are they going to run the ball? Like, we just went out this offseason, we gave Duke more money, we signed Carlos Hyde, and we used the number 35 overall pick in the draft on Nick Chubb. We have a 3-headed running back monster, and we invested heavily in Hubbard at right guard, and now you have right tackle, and now you have all the money you're giving to Bitonio. The Treader's got a decent contract. Zeitler's one of the highest paid guards in the league, and Hubbard is making significant money for a right tackle. 4 of your 5 linemen are making a bunch of money to help pave the way for the run game, and we went literally. It took us until the third possession, 10 plays, with 9 of them being passes, scripted passes, one of them being a scramble, to get to multiple runs in a row. The whole thing was just mind-boggling to me.
It baffled me. You know what? Maybe Todd Haley would come back and say we had practiced those plays all week. We had went through our final walkthrough. We didn't have time to put a new script in once we knew what the forecast was going to be. It's baffling to me that was the script for that game. If it was dry weather, I can see it. And then to come out and script run. I mean, that was kind of crazy too, because you're probably still in the script at that point. It's very possible.
So what was intriguing about that real quick is that, so when they first came out with all of their pass plays, right, they had a specific set of, they had specific personnel packages out there. They literally completely tipped their hand that they were going run heavy. They ended up going with more of a power set and brought in that Watford, who they had just picked up and added to the team late in the year, and he was getting manhandled, but he was their power 6 lineman. And I was like, what is going on? I'm like, you have all of these sets, and first off, it's not like you have a traditional old school like I formation running back and Carlos Hyde. You have a guy that excels out of your zone read sets.
I was just about to say they should be, if they don't eventually start running, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not a fan of this. If you don't start running some zone read and read option with Tyrod and Carlos Hyde, or Tyrod and Duke Johnson, you're an idiot.
It took until, so it was the 5th possession, and I can read you because I told you like how I do my notes when I'm doing it. It was the 3rd play on the Browns' 5th possession, and my note for my charts says zone read. Oh my God, big run by Carlos Hyde. The oh my God, the little OMG wasn't to sound like a schoolgirl or anything. It was, hey, they finally did what Carlos Hyde does best. And it only took us until the 5th possession of the game.
When they ran out of non-obvious running formations, the running game was effective. You are not good enough to line up and tell the other team we're going to run the ball, and you're going to run the ball. Almost no one is good enough in the NFL to line up in a telegraphed we're going to run the ball formation early in the game and run it down the other team's throat. You are not that good. You cannot do that. I know you want to be able to do that, but you can't do that. If you're an offensive coordinator, you should always have a goal of sending out a formation and a personnel group that has the defense going, I don't know if this is going to be a run or a pass, because you want the linebackers to have to read that play out to give you that advantage.
You know what's kind of incredible to me while we're still on the run game here is that, so breaking it down afterwards, so Tyrod led all rushers, 8 for 77 and a touchdown. Hyde, 22 for 62. A lot of bad run play calls. They were running stretch plays with Hyde, which made literally no sense to me. They were running there's a whole lot of what I saw, and I know Jake Burns talked about it a little bit when we had him on. Just the types of play calls where Hyde has success. They just weren't running him in for the most part during this game. But then when you look at the other two backs, right? Chubb had 3 carries for 21 yards. 2 of them were on that one drive where they went run heavy, and they look great. And then he only got 1 other carry the entire game.
Well, there's a reason for that.
The pass pro problems.
He almost got Tyrod Taylor killed.
Yeah. But then Duke had 5 rushes for 17 yards, right? And 3 of the 5 were on Tyrod's going to get Duke absolutely decapitated draw plays where it's completely obvious, and this again goes back to Tyrod, it's completely obvious to me, not knowing the play, because when I rewatched the game today, it was like I didn't know what plays, because it's a different vantage point when you're in the stadium and the dog pound than
different sobriety point
as well. And so I was watching the game kind of brand new to everything, and I'm sitting here and I'm watching this play. I'm like, Tyrod, if you run the ball here, you're going to get the running back killed. Snap, draw, boom. And I'm like, what is going? I mean, maybe they could be disguising the rush, okay? But it's clear to me that they're overloading one side of the line and they're bringing 3 guys from that side. And there's no help on that side. So somebody's going to come free unless Hubbard or Zeitler makes the best 2-man combo, 2-man block of their lives right there. So the whole, again, it was just the overall play calling. And I'm putting this on Haley because it should have been better. Yes, Tyrod Taylor made a lot of mistakes. Yes, your undrafted rookie free agent left tackle, who we'll get to in a minute, had a lot of problems. You know who else had problems in this one? Kevin Zeitler. I wrote down him on multiple times, and he missed pretty much the entire preseason until the last game. You could tell. I mean, he had a lot of missed blocks. I wrote on numerous times where I said 70 got destroyed, which allowed his man to get penetration, and then Tyrod turned into this guy. People are going to blame Harrison, but it's actually on Zeitler. Hubbard struggled as well. So this entire line that we've put a lot of money into, everybody's going to blame Harrison because it was his first start. But the line itself, and I think it just all goes back to the Haley's play calling in this one. Haley's calling plays for a quarterback that's on his bench and not the one that's in his starting lineup. And he's not doing it on purpose. Because somebody asked me that on Twitter earlier.
He was calling plays for the quarterback that he was playing against.
That too.
And not the one on his line. He might have been calling plays for the running back that he should have been playing against. And the offensive line that he's playing against. And not the one he has. I will agree with you. Now, while I think Todd Haley probably drew up some great plays, they're great plays if you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. Well, any play is. But they're great plays if you've got Ben Roethlisberger as your quarterback. They were not great plays for this personnel grouping.
No, they're quick out of the hands, quick decision-making, timing type plays, and that's not the quarterback that Tyrod Taylor is. And that's why, again, earlier I was saying it, I don't feel like it's bad to say as a fan that you watched the football game yesterday, and I don't think it's bad to say, listen, Tyrod is going to be the quarterback he's going to be the quarterback. I don't know how long, because I think it's just going to get to a point where Todd Haley goes and looks at Hugh and says, Hugh, my offense and the plays that we want to run as a team that put us in the best spot to win as a team are with the guy that's riding the pine, not the guy that's starting. And that's not you're talking about a full script change of what, and maybe that's on the coaching staff again, because that was one of my biggest complaints last year about Hugh and Greg Williams is they refused to alter their play calling to fit the players that they have, and instead they did the square or round hole, square peg, or whatever the hell it is. They said they did that, and maybe we're looking at that again with Haley, and he's not willing to adapt his play calling. But right now, what the play calling that I saw against Pittsburgh Steelers is better suited for Baker Mayfield than Tyrod.
Here's the problem. Okay, the play calling is actually well suited for everybody else on the team except the quarterback.
Right.
You might want to change the running plays just a little bit for Carlos Hyde, who's less of a delayed runner than Le'Veon Bell is. He doesn't delay and wait, and
it's the vision thing.
Yes, Carlos Hyde is more of I don't want to say he's a one cut and downhill guy, but he moves faster. He cuts. He's not Le'Veon Bell. He's more of a power runner in a lot of ways. But with your wide receiving core, with these guys, you want quick hits. These guys are going to get open quickly, and you want to be able to do a lot of these things, and you want to be able to do more advanced concepts with the playmakers that you have. And I can't believe I'm saying this, because I am Mr. Let the quarterback sit. Let the rookie quarterback sit. Let the rookie quarterback sit. Baker Mayfield doesn't need to sit. I'm not saying start Baker Mayfield. I'm not beating that drum. I hate it when people beat that drum. But it might be possible. that Baker Mayfield is the better fit for this offense. It just might be. That said, I don't think Tyrod Taylor is going to be this bad going forward. I think you will see a better Tyrod Taylor against the New Orleans Saints, who just got destroyed by Ryan Fitzpatrick for 48 points. So I think you're going to see a better effort, much better effort, out of Tyrod Taylor and an offense that looks better just because you're getting some class relief defensively next week. And that might tap the brakes on the run Tyrod Taylor out of town train that's pretty close to going on here. Because I can tell you, if he goes out and lays an egg again next week, you're going to be pressing really hard when you go play the New York Jets, I believe, in week 3. It's the Jets, right?
Yeah, home game against the Jets.
You're pressing really hard for a win, because if you don't get a win against the Jets, it's going to get really ugly again, and Hugh Jackson's going to start feeling the pressure.
Who, I know this isn't a live show, so the fate will already be determined, but the Jets are actually, they came back. They're winning 17-7 now, and Sam Darnold's kind of settled in on his first start. So, it could be that you could be looking at a guy who's feeling good and facing the team that everybody thought was going to draft him there in week 3.
It couldn't. I could be dead wrong about the Jets. Remember, there's this thing. I can't pick the Jets right to save my life. Any time I tell you the Jets are going to win, go the other way. I tell you the Jets are going to lose, go the other way. I cannot pick a Jets game to save my life. Can't figure them out. But it's a mess right now.
So,
and I mean, it's that the offense was offensive. I mean, we can get blindsided by the fact that they came back off some turnovers and tied at 21-21 and didn't lose. But for 52 minutes, that was a just complete crap show. I've already sworn enough this episode. That was a crap show for 53 minutes.
So before we close the door, because I think we're kind of getting to the natural end of talking about the offense, I do want to go back to Josh Gordon for a second, because in last episode we were taking guesses at how what percentage of the snaps he would play. So when I looked back at the snap count again. Sober eyes today, not yesterday when I tweeted out early on, just play Josh Gordon, you stubborn asshole, Hugh Jackson. But going back, Josh Gordon ended up playing 78% of the snaps. He was on the field for 78% of the snaps in this one. He had 3 targets.
That's a fireable offense.
Jarvis Landry, your big money guy, probably by design, as we talked about before we started, 15 targets. You want to know who else had more targets than Josh Gordon? Let's go ahead and dive in.
Hollywood Higgins.
Hollywood Higgins had 4 targets. David Njoku, 7 targets. Duke Johnson, 6 targets. Josh Gordon, 3 targets, 1 catch, 1 touchdown.
It's pretty amazing. It's a pretty bad sign when your third string pass catching specialist running back has more targets than the best player on your team. Josh Gordon is the best receiver on the Browns roster. That's nothing against Landry. But Josh Gordon is still the best receiver on the roster. He is still, and he hasn't played much in the last 3 or 4 years, and he's 27 years old. He is still probably one of the 3 best wide receivers in the game. And I could argue that he was the best wide receiver on the field yesterday. And that was a field that included Antonio Brown. And you targeted him 3 times. You targeted him 3 times. You went out of your way to not involve one of the best wide receivers in the game. Are you on the take? I don't know. Were you betting against the Browns? I can't figure this one out.
And this is going to be my final note on the offense. And this just goes back to what I was saying earlier about Tyrod Taylor. And this is everything you need to know. Jarvis Landry, 15 targets. Where were his eyes pretty much every time he dropped back to pass in this game?
On Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis Landry. What does that tell you? If Josh Gordon only got 3 targets, Josh Gordon wasn't his primary read, and Tyrod Taylor has a little bit of trouble getting to the other side of the field and finding the other receiver quickly. And that just goes back. And I mean, when you look at his time, last year, his time from snap to throw it being like 3.12, basically what has to happen in that scenario, if your first receiver is your primary read and then you're moving the pocket, so your eyes go down, you scramble outside, even if your eyes are up, basically in order for him to get to JG's got to break open down the field at that point. He's got to see Gordon wide open to be like, oh shoot, there goes that Gordon. I got to throw him the ball, which is kind of like what happened.
I think there's a difference, and now we're getting into quarterback play, but I think I've read this before, and I'm pretty positive this is the difference. You talk to a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and Matt Ryan even said it. They're not, like the average guy sitting in the chair thinks that you read a field out and you go through your progressions by, I check my first read, he's covered. I move to my second read, he's covered. I move to my third read, he's covered. And we think that you look at your wide receivers. But if you talk to a Tom Brady, you talk to an Aaron Rodgers, you talk to a Matt Ryan, they're looking, there's two key defensive players on every play that they're looking at. They already know the play. And the key read is sometimes it's the Mike linebacker, sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's an outside linebacker. And they're looking to see if the Mike linebacker drops back, that means that any of the routes that go over the middle are taken out of the play. Then they're watching the free safety. If the free safety comes up, that means they're going to any of their over-the-top routes. So if you've got a post coming off the outside to the middle, and you see the free safety come up, and you see the Mike linebacker staying, or even vacating a little bit to the left, you know that any of your over-the-middle drag routes are out. So you come off of that. If that's your first read, you come off of it to the post. Because now you're looking at, where's the cornerback on the post? Is he outside leveraged? Okay, the safety's up. He's outside leveraged. Your post is the read. And you're throwing it as soon as you see that the safety has come up far enough that he can't get back. It's not about going through your receivers. If you try to go through it receiver by receiver by receiver, you're never going to get to your third and fourth read in 3.2 seconds. You have to figure out, know as the quarterback, what your key defensive reads are. And usually it's a middle linebacker or it's a free safety. And then you're looking for leverage as to what where your player has inside, outside leverage. You know where the route's going. And you've got to be looking at these things. And that's when the intuitive play is. That's why Aaron Rodgers seems to be able to get the ball out of his hands so quickly, because he's watching where the defense is, where they move to. And Matt Ryan said you're looking for flashes of space. And when you see open space, you're throwing to the open space because you know your wide receiver is going to get there eventually.
And that's not what Tyrod Taylor did yesterday. All right.
Yep.
I think that's enough on the offense. We probably talked about the offense for about a half hour already. So let's flip over to the other side of the ball, the defense, where we both thought that we were going to maybe get a little bit of a break when it came to the run game with, backup James Conner stepping in for MIA Le'Veon Bell. Now, we were concerned a little bit, and so was Sobo when we talked to him last week about, the Steelers' offensive line coming out a little angry. And boy, did they come out angry. James Conner, 31 rushes, 135 yards, 2 touchdowns. Steelers as a whole, 35 for 159 and 2 touchdowns.
It was disappointing. It was more than disappointing. It was depressing. You are supposed to have a dominant, very good defensive line and an above average linebacking core. And you want to feel that you could have went in there and shut that down and held the Steelers to less than 100 yards on the ground. You want to believe that. And you got your lunch fed to you. You got your lunch fed to you by the Steelers offensive line. And they ran the ball at will. And you were not effective. And it was very depressing for 53 minutes. And then it's like the Browns' balls dropped. And they remembered that they were men. And they started throwing the Steelers around like they were a bunch of children for overtime in the last 7 minutes of the game. And I have no idea what happened. I mean, it's like Popeye and they ate some spinach. Were they the Hulk and they finally got angry? 53 minutes in, like everything flipped.
Yeah, the whole thing was weird. I mean, when I was charting this game consistently over and over again, I just kept writing right side of Steelers line, dominating left side of Browns defensive line. Over and over and over and over again. It's kind of intriguing to me because what's going to happen is when people break down this game, they're going to focus in on, and I don't want to take anything away from him because Myles Garrett had a fantastic football game. I mean, he had he had 2 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. I believe he caused 2 of those fumbles. He caused 2 of the fumbles, because he had the one late the strip of Connor that Schobert picked up, and then he caused another one once. I don't know.
He did what he was supposed to do. In your wildest dreams, he did what he was supposed to. He caused 2 turnovers, and he was scaring the crap out of Ben Roethlisberger.
Absolutely,
he was disruptive.
There's a caveat to that also during the game is a lot of times, and people out there listening, please do not take this as me saying Myles Garrett is not a good run defender, because I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Myles Garrett as a run defender to make that decision. And Myles Garrett wasn't drafted to be a run defender. He was drafted to be a guy like Von Miller that gets to the quarterback, disrupts the game that way, which he's doing. But I can tell you that when I charted this game over and over again, when it came to run plays, Myles Garrett was not making any sort of an impact off of that edge. And maybe it was designed. Maybe that's the way the Browns were doing it, that they were trying to attack with Garrett around the edge and draw the right tackle that way for the Steelers. But, when he was lined up on that side, this is a lot of the plays I was watching from the right side. I mean, he moves around. He'll line up on both the left and the right side of the line. But there were a number of times when the Steelers were running the ball right at one Myles Garrett side of the line, also with Ogunjobi next to him on numerous occasions, and the Browns could not do anything. I mean, and we're not talking little holes that Connor squeaked through. We're talking there were some runs where Connor was untouched for the first 7 yards until he got back, until one of the linebackers made it up to him. I mean, we're talking 7 yards of free, clean running space for a backup running back.
It was disturbing. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And it's also, I want to give credit to the defense. I want to give credit to the defense because they got 5 turnovers and they caused 5 turnovers. But Big Ben was awful. And that was a big part of that. Big Ben was awful. And you got 5 turnovers and you gave up 21 points. You got 6 turnovers, and you gave up 21 points. I'm not sure that's good. I'm really not. How ugly is that game if you don't get 6 turnovers? Do they put up 42? How many points do they put up?
Yeah.
If you don't get 6 turnovers.
That's a good question.
This is a weird game to unpack because there's so much good. Myles Garrett did everything in your wildest dreams you hoped that he would do. Denzel Ward had to exceed anybody. Denzel Ward was what you thought Joe Hayden was going to be in his first game. And he had 2 interceptions, one of which was just an amazing, intuitive, aggressive play for a rookie defensive back to go make.
That was
leaving his man to come make that interception. And the second one was just him keeping his head up and ball hawking again to go get an interception. Not to mention some of the plays he made making tackles, late pass defenses, doing a great job on Antonio Brown for most of the game. And maybe the play that is most impressive is the touchdown that Antonio Brown got. And I know that sounds absurd, but he is step for step with Antonio Brown in his shirt. As the ball arrives, his hand is on Antonio Brown's numbers between his hands as he's going to catch the ball, which is the technique that they coach these defensive backs to do now. They don't teach you to turn around for the ball.
Especially at Ohio State.
Especially at Ohio State. They teach you to put that hand in between the numbers, in between the hands, and by a fluke, it misses his hand. And then even more absurd is that Antonio Brown catches that ball and Denzel Ward's arm at the exact same time. I mean, you cannot play better defense. You go get me anybody you want to find who's ever played corner. They're not playing that ball any better against the best wide receiver in the game, arguably. If he's not the best, he's the second or third best. You can't play that any better. And to ask Denzel Ward to ask of what you did of him, man, he stepped up and answered the bell big time. I mean, you can't ask, it'd be hard-pressed to ask a 5-year veteran cornerback to go make some of the plays that he made yesterday and do more to impact the game.
What's kind of incredible to me about the Browns secondary in this one. So somebody who wasn't really paying attention, right? Or Fantasy Football Joe is going to go look up the box score. They're going to see Juju Smith-Schuster, 5 catches, 119 yards. They're going to see Antonio Brown, 9 catches, 93 yards, 1 touchdown. Jesse James, 3 for 60. James Conner, 5 for 57. They're going to go, Bob, what do you mean the Browns secondary played well against the Pittsburgh Steelers? They tied the football game, and they gave up 119 yards to the second receiver and 93 yards to the number 1 receiver. The problem is that this is what happens when you box score scout versus actually watching the game. If the Cleveland Browns defense, as weird as this sounds again, because Myles Garrett wreaked havoc and you had another sack out of Jannard Avery and there was another sack, I forget who had it. If the Browns defense was getting the type of penetration up front that the Steelers defense was, we would be talking about a completely different game right now, an outcome of the game, because the Browns coverage was they were covering for way longer than most people would have expected. I mean, I specifically noted here, D-line struggled to penetrate most of the game. Browns coverage, I don't even understand how they held that coverage as long as they did sometimes against AB and Juju, given the shiftiness of AB and Juju. Now, I will say this. I am a very, very, very big Brian Body Calhoun fan. I went as far as to start calling him the pride of Minnesota last year out of nowhere because he went to Minnesota. Calhoun did struggle against Juju. And so I wanted to put that out there because Juju lined up primarily in the slot in this one. I'm excited to see once Pro Football Focus comes out with their numbers exactly how much. But he was one of the highest percentage of snap rates ran from the slot last year. And he was in the slot again. And on a number of his catches, especially that big, I believe it was 67-yarder that he had, he roasted Calhoun. And that's not Calhoun's been very, very good as an undrafted guy since he came here, so I don't want to take too much away from him. But it was clear, and it was kind of something you touched on in one of the other podcasts about Terrence Mitchell and, just slower guys not being able to cover faster guys or faster short area quickness guys. And you saw it there with Calhoun. And you saw it to an extent with Mitchell when he was lined up on AB and they were running drag routes, anything that would have forced Terrence Mitchell to cover AB longer periods of time. But with that said, not to take away from what Terrence Mitchell did either, because Terrence Mitchell had a very, very good football game. He was physical with AB. He got up in his face. I mean, when you look at AB, 9 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown, if you take away that touchdown reception that he had against Ward, which it was the absolute perfect throw, absolute perfect catch, absolute perfect defense, AB was kind of almost ineffective in this game. And I know it's saying a lot for a guy that, 993 and a touchdown, but Terrence Mitchell and Denzel Ward did a very, very, very good job splitting the coverages on AB all day long. And I really think, honestly, if Calhoun wouldn't have given up the big gainer to Juju. Also on that play, Demarius Randall and the Greg Williams. Demarius Randall was 32 yards, I counted, from the line of scrimmage when that play started. So when Juju roasted Calhoun at the line of scrimmage for the slant, and then he caught the ball in stride. I mean, dude, Demarius Randall was so far back that he actually lost his footing because of the rain and fell over, and that's why Juju got further.
Okay, I was going to say, because
if he was easily 30 yards off the line.
If that punt returner safety can't stop that play from going 67 yards, then there's no point to running that formation ever. So it's good to know that he lost his footing. I was also going to say, one of the other things that you have to keep in your mind is on a wet field, it is the receiver's advantage because the receiver knows where they're going and the receiver knows where they're going to cut and when they're going to cut. And the defensive back is at a disadvantage because they have to react to the receiver. It is the receiver's advantage on a wet field. They know where they're going and you don't. So you got to have that into play. I want to say that, though, that Greg Williams, here, I'll play amateur defensive coordinator. Aside from Denzel Ward, and even Denzel Ward isn't going to defend slants at 100% rate, okay? You can't keep having a safety 30 yards over the middle and think that teams aren't going to run slants on you and drags over the middle and destroy your cornerbacks, okay? A drag and a slant is a wide receiver's best friend. Because all you got to do is beat them on the first move, and unless that defensive back is significantly faster than you, they're not going to close that gap in time. Okay? You have to have linebacker help on the inside. If you're not helping with some kind of zone coverage underneath, okay, or a pass-off coverage, at least to a linebacker as they're crossing, you're going to get murdered on slants. You cannot ask a cornerback to go man-to-man with no help underneath from the linebackers on a slant and win it every time, especially without a safety underneath. And you don't have a safety underneath. You don't have any help. You are vacating the middle of the field. We saw it all last year. And I would love to Terrence Mitchell ran away from a couple times on drag routes, but it's a drag route. It's going to happen. All they got to do is beat you to the inside. You might say, don't let them beat you to the inside, but you can't take inside leverage every time because then they'll beat you to the outside over the top. So at some point, that is on Greg Williams to have one or two linebackers back there to help take those slants away, or he's got to get out of that.
Well, and here's the other issue, again, with that type of defense. So you have you got your safety, 25, 30 yards off, right? And now you're relying on those linebackers to do something that they're not good at. I'm not saying that they can't do it, but your linebackers aren't. No, if they were good in pass coverage, they would probably be corners or they'd probably be safeties, but they're linebackers. And we saw it again. Jesse James, 3 catches for 60. Tight end problems that have plagued us since 1999. James Conner, 5 for 57. Nobody picking up the running back out of the backfield on 3 or 4 different occasions during this game. Jesse James is a 37-yarder. I believe, I forget, I'd have to go back into my notes, but I specifically noted it. I forget who it was, but they literally, oh, you know what it was? It was a coverage problem. So Kirko, it was a penetration problem. So it was really good coverage. It was like 4 or 5 seconds of coverage, and Kirko had him. But again, at some point, the tight end is going to be better than the coverage linebacker. And after nobody got to Ben, I think Ben eluded a sack and got outside. Jesse James just got behind Kirko, and then the whole defense was, 20 yards down the field. So Ben was able to just hit Jesse James over top of Kirko, and he went for 37 yards. So again, it's just that schematic problem to me that, you're continuously having these guys that far back because you don't want to get beat deep. But the problem is teams as good as Ben Roethlisberger, teams with a quarterback as good as Ben Roethlisberger are just going to nickel and dime you underneath to death. I mean, hell, there was that one possession. I think it was right before the end of it was either the end of the half or the end of the fourth quarter. I think it was the end of the half, where the Steelers started with the ball on their own 5-yard line after a punt. And they literally got all the way down the field in less than a minute because of the way the Browns had both safeties back deep, trying not to get beat deep. They just counter underneath, run, just like nickel and diming because there's not enough guys that close to the line of scrimmage, because now your linebackers have to cheat and help the slot. And now you're just leaving that whole middle open, like you said.
Yep. And I didn't get there quick enough with the "that's what she said" reference. And you can backtrack to exactly where that was going to be dropped. But, yeah, it also exacerbates other problems. We said there was a problem stopping the run. Well, part of the problem stopping the run is when your linebackers know that there's a gap of 30 yards between them and the safety. That means they've got to take a deeper drop, and they've got to drop faster. And it might delay them. They might have to commit to dropping first. They might be delayed on attacking the run and reading the run. You're asking them to drop deeper. Most linebackers don't have a 25-yard gap between them and the only safety. And you're asking your linebackers to pick up that slack on anything over the middle. And that's one of the areas that good quarterbacks attack, is the gap between the safeties and how far and how fast the linebackers can drop. And that you're asking a lot of a linebacker to do that anyway in normal coverage, to be able to drop and take away routes over the middle. You're really making a tough ask of Joe Schobert to drop deep enough to take away a route from Jesse James or Antonio Brown or Juju Smith-Schuster in that defense. You're creating a huge gap to pick apart in that coverage every time. And you're weakening your run attack. You just are. Because your linebackers are on their heels anyway, because they know they have all that responsibility behind them. And that probably makes them hesitant to step up, especially if it's play action. You're asking a lot.
It's crazy to me. If we were just box score watching here, we're talking about a defense that had 3 fumble recoveries, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss, and 3 interceptions. And we're crazy unhappy with what we saw out there from Greg Williams.
Because if you didn't have the turnovers, what's the result of this game?
Oh, they lose easily.
But they might have put up 40. This is a weird game because there was a lot of good. Hey, they caused the turnovers. But a lot of those turnovers were self-inflicted too. And Myles Garrett disrupted those turnovers. It was an ugly game. And schematically, it makes no sense. It is an easily exploitable defensive arrangement with that guardian angel safety. I'm surprised it hasn't been exploited more. I would just keep running crossing routes over the middle all day behind the linebackers. All day, run levels routes.
I don't want to go here yet because I still have one more thing to talk about in this game, but it scares me to think of what Drew Brees is going to do next week at home in the Dome against that defense. Just because of, if it wasn't for Ben, and I know you wanted to touch on this too, so I'll give you the opportunity before I go into the special teams that I have to talk about. Ben kind of looked like aging Brett Favre out there, and I know that was your take, so I don't want to steal it too much, but he was making some really bad decisions. There were some mishandled snaps, bad snaps, old school Ben or somebody else might have just ate and fallen on, but then it caused a lot of those turnovers or the bad plays. So I wanted to let you just talk about Ben a little bit, because I know there was a lot you didn't like.
He was off. He was sloppy. He missed throws. There were throws he missed wide open. On the first possession, Antonio Brown had absolutely destroyed his man on a slant, and Ben just missed him. Terribly missed him. I mean, look, I'm the biggest Brett Favre fan you'll find. He's my favorite football player of all time. And his last year in the league, he shouldn't have came back, and he knew it. And he had to be talked out of retirement to come back. Ben Roethlisberger had to be talked out of retirement to come play last year. And that's probably because Ben knew that it was fading. Came back and had a great year last year. Ben looked very bad compared to Ben Roethlisberger in this game. And a lot of these turnovers were on Ben, not on the Browns. A lot of these turnovers don't happen in years past. Ben finds a way to keep those plays alive. He shrugs off the tackles. He shrugs off the rush. He's a step quicker and he gets away from it. He reads the play out a step faster. Ben was off. And it's one of those weird things to unpack. Was it the Browns defense getting disruptive and making Ben make mistakes? Or is it that Ben is not who he was anymore and Father Time has finally caught up to him? We're going to see as the year goes on. Maybe that was just him kicking off the rust and getting back into game shape, and he's still going to be the dominant quarterback that he's been throughout his entire career. But he looked terrible yesterday. He really did.
So the final thing on this game for me, and it's mainly because, on the previous podcast, we've taken subscriber questions. This one, I didn't have to take subscriber questions on. And sorry, subscribers out there. I know we kind of planned this and put it out there last second. But there were an unprecedented number of questions in our Ask the Insiders forum today on the special teams. OBR subscribers, this is why I love you. Because while everybody else is out there on Twitter freaking out about this and that, literally 8, 9, maybe 10 questions today on, did the Browns screw up with their special teams coordinator hire? How bad is our special teams? How many people can we waive and pick up guys who have a proven track record of being good on special teams? So this is why I love OBR subscribers. So while I was rewatching the game today, I wanted to pay special attention to what was going on in special teams, because all preseason long, I kind of pushed your questions on the special teams and on Amos Allen to the side because, there had been some rumblings out of the Cardinals that Allen wasn't very good at being a special teams coach, or some people had some negative things to say about him. But I wanted to give him a chance, and I wanted to give his unit a chance, and I wanted to give just everybody a chance to get things together. So before I get into this, I want to say we are still talking about the very first game that this special teams unit has played together as a whole, because all preseason long, you're rotating in all of those guys that you're eventually going to cut to see if a guy that you like his certain traits can actually fill on special teams and be a depth guy at another position. So you saw during the preseason guys like Nassib running down there and Orchard running down there on special teams, trying to see if you could keep them on this roster being special teams guy. So this game against the Steelers was the first of the special teams unit together. So I will give Amos Allen the benefit of the doubt on that. I will also give Amos Allen the benefit of the doubt on players got to play. Guys have to show it, because I have never seen I've never seen a special teams unit lack any inspiration with the way that I did during this Steelers game. And this is me getting a little hype right now about a special teams, which is completely against everything that I believe in. I don't really get too upset about it because I feel like it's a controlled aspect of the game that as long as you don't screw up too bad, you're good. Time and time again, this is what I saw from punts. Denzel Rice was the first guy down there. Denzel Rice overran the punt, even though you can see the punt returner standing in front of you roundabout where he's going to catch the ball. Every single time he was running so fast, he would run past or allow himself to get unblocked. The other thing I saw is that time and time again, the next guy into the damn screen was the long snapper.
That should never happen.
Nobody from the other side. And I get the long snapper guy. I forget his name, but he's an effort guy. I mean, he's getting down there, but nobody else. I mean, one other time, I think I saw one other player get down there before the long snapper, and it was Seth DeVolve, who's coming off of an injury.
You got to be ashamed if the long snapper is consistently the second guy to the point of attack. I mean, I'm sorry, not anything on long snappers, but the long snapper is not supposed to be the most athletic guy on the special teams unit, or the second most athletic guy. I got a full disclosure here. So, yeah, when you asked did they make a mistake in the special teams thing, I'm going to say yes, but that's because I know Chris Tabor a little bit. Like I've talked to him. I know him out, as a person, not like I've got his phone number and we're friends and we'll go talk, but I know Tabes. So yeah, I'm a little biased there that I think he got a raw deal, because I think a lot of that was the talent level on special teams. And I think he's a hell of a coach when he has talent to work with. I also know two guys who played for him and said flat out in their entire high school, college, NFL career, they've never played for a coach that they played for harder or motivated them to give more effort than him. So, yeah, full disclosure off the rip, I'm biased. I think that was a mistake. That said, I'm going to give the same justification now. You're a team that went 1-31 the last 2 years, and you went 4-44 in the last 3. You have talent issues at the primary positions, and that means you're probably going to have talent issues on the special teams, which is generally roster guys 40 through 53. You're going to have talent problems there. And a coach can only do so much. The players have to go out and execute. Todd Haley drew up a great play for Tyrod Taylor to win the game, and he didn't execute it. Zane Gonzalez had a terrible kick. You could say whatever you want to. It was a low kick that was blockable. You could say what you want to about the weather. Special teams coach can't kick the ball for Zane Gonzalez. Can't do it. Period. And so I don't know how much I can blame him. The special teams coach can't tell Jabril Peppers not to do a fair catch when you've got 20 yards of space between you and the next guy.
That was bad.
He also can't make somebody else be there with Peppers to tell him return it. Peppers had no help. I can't even blame Jabril. You're going to take your eyes off the ball? That's how you fumble a ball. Secure the catch. There's supposed to be someone down there to tell him it's returnable. Outkick the coverage, outkick the return team. Pepper saw a punt up there for 5 seconds and said someone's going to be about ready to annihilate me and waved for the fair catch. Turned out to be the wrong call. I can't blame the special teams coach for that. Maybe I can blame him for a lack of effort, but some people are just lazy. Cam Irving isn't going to get a coach that's going to make him play with intensity.
Although he just got a contract extension.
My point is, there are some guys that just don't have effort and energy.
Yeah.
And if the long snapper's beating out the special teams, then I think you need to look deeper than the coach. Was special teams a bright spot? No. Did you lose the game on special teams? No. You lost that game when Tyrod Taylor missed Josh Gordon for a walk-in touchdown. You lost that game in the first half when you went pass dominant with Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback instead of being run dominant. You lost that game in the first 3 quarters when you couldn't stop the run. That's where you lost that game. You lost that game when you gave up the middle of the field by playing the I'm afraid to get deep punt returner on defense and going 10 on 11. That's where you lost that game. Was it important? Absolutely. Is it an astute observation to look at that game and pick out the fact that, boy, did we make a mistake on special teams? Again, you might be able to put Vince Lombardi out there to coach these special teams. And I'm not sure that it's going to matter. Let me give you an example. Urban Meyer is a hell of a coach. I know it's college football. Urban Meyer is a hell of a coach, right?
Yep.
Jim Tressel was a hell of a coach, right?
Yep.
Ohio State's had problems on special teams in the Urban Meyer era for the last 3 or 4 years, right? There were quite a few times on special teams in the Jim Tressel era that you had problems on special teams. Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel were both the special teams coach for Ohio State. So sometimes it just comes down to the last roster position you fill is special teams, and you generally tend to fill it with the guys that aren't talented enough to be your playmakers on offense and defense, and you don't want to risk them getting injured on special teams.
Or your project guys that you want.
Or your projects.
That you want to maybe,
Correct.
Like your Derek Willies, big, tall receiver that you want to see good, but you need him to do something, or else you can't justify keeping him on the roster.
It's the bottom of the depth chart.
Yeah.
It's the bottom of the depth chart. And when you are a 1-31 team coming off an 0-16 year, no matter how much you've turned this roster over, how good is your special teams going to be to begin with? You can only be as good as what you have to work with.
The last thing I want to say on the special teams for those of you that were asking, so there were guys overrunning, there were guys taking bad pursuit angles, and I will finally apologize out there to the likes of Tank Carter and Marlon Moore, who every single year when it came time for cuts, I was like, oh, you know what? We need to keep this guy on defense, this project guy over him, because you know what? We need a guy with higher upside. I'm going to apologize because after watching that first game, and I know like Scott said, the special teams didn't cost us the game, but after watching years of guys like Tank Carters and Marlon Moore who actually filled their role properly and did all of the right things on special teams, I'd like to apologize to every single year when I said, oh, let's go ahead and cut those guys and keep the project guy for the defense or the project receiver over them, because I did see it after rewatching the game where having those special teams aces could have come, could have been game changers. I mean, I'm not saying that they lost the game, but there were returns that would have probably only been a 5-yard return versus a 25-yard return if you'd have had guys that are hustling down the field like a Tank Carter or a Marlon Moore on punt coverage. So I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have talent in special teams. And sometimes as a fan, you question why, but it's important to have talent in special teams. And the Browns really might want to look into a field goal kicker. I think I read something that Dan Bailey, the second most accurate kicker of NFL history, is available.
Had a couple of tryouts, I believe, but I don't think he's signed with anybody yet.
Let me just say that Zane Gonzalez, I hope your family's not listening. You may be a really nice guy, and you may someday be a really good kicker. Right now, you're not a good kicker. He's just not. He's not a good kicker. And if I don't want to see the game in Zane Gonzalez's hands. I just don't. And look, Phil Dawson was pretty...
Damn you, Sashi Brown.
Phil Dawson was atrocious in his first couple of years in Cleveland. He really was. We forget that. Phil Dawson didn't have a 50-yard field goal in his leg. So, and he became Mr. Automatic. Okay? Maybe he just injected HGH directly into his right leg. Okay? Or Mrs. Wade's special pie every day. But in the end, maybe Zane Gonzalez will develop into a good field goal kicker, but he's just not there right now.
All right. I think it's time to turn the page on the 21-21 tie from Tyrod Taylor, as the kids out there on Twitter are calling him now, with a TIE instead of a TUH or a TY. Let's take a quick look ahead, because I don't want to spoil this too much. I know we've discussed it, so it'll just be a little teaser out there. We're looking into possibly doing a live weekly preview show. So it'll be like a radio show format where we go back and forth. We'll have a producer in the studio, take calls, do live interaction on Twitter. We're hopefully doing that, so we'll definitely push out that information through the OBR Twitter account and through the Orange and Brown Report a little later this week if we can get it fired up. But I do want to look forward to the Saints game, because after a tie, you're going on the road to face a quarterback that doesn't lose at home in Drew Brees, who just lost at home to Ryan Fitzpatrick. And now I'm not putting the loss on Drew Brees, who was 37 of 45 for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Father time ain't catching Drew Brees.
But he was outdueled by the beard of Ryan Fitzpatrick to the tune of 21 of 28 for 417 and 4 touchdowns. We're talking about a Saints defense that was pretty damn good last year, with Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Jordan, and the rest of that great defense, or pretty good defense. And they just got destroyed by a Buccaneers team that was supposed to be dead in the water this year, with Jameis Winston suspended for the first couple of games, and just numerous questions all over that defense. Nobody thought the Buccaneers were going to come out and hang 48 on the Saints. So looking ahead to the Browns Saints this week, and like you said, you're looking for Tyrod to take a step forward. What do you think Tyrod Taylor and the Cleveland Browns need to do to get a victory against the Saints?
Run the damn ball. Run the ball. It's that simple. Run the ball out of formations that don't telegraph that you're running the ball. Mix in some real read option with Tyrod Taylor and Carlos Hyde, and let Tyrod Taylor do the read option. I know that sounds insane. If he gets hurt, you got Baker Mayfield. Run some read option. Make teams adjust to you. Run some more drag routes. Run some more slant routes. Run the ball. Also, one more thing. Target Josh Gordon more than 3 times. If Josh Gordon doesn't get 10 targets next week, someone should punch Todd Haley in the throat. Right in the throat. And then kick him in the balls.
So the receiving game is a great place for you for that. I'm glad you took us there, because that's my main area, but I'm taking a little bit different of an approach. 5 for 146 and 2 touchdowns. That was the stat line for Deshaun Jackson. Yes, that Deshaun Jackson. Aging Deshaun Jackson.
He's still in the league?
But
I thought he died.
But what Jackson does still have is speed. So I'm going to go a different direction. and obviously I want Josh Gordon to get the ball. I mean, that's not even in question here. I want to see a certain rookie who got pulled over at 3 a.m. driving with a suspended license. I don't know, maybe get a target. Antonio Callaway did not receive one target in the game against the Steelers. So when I look back, and I'm going to rewatch this game, so hopefully I'll have even more to say on the live show if we can get it off the ground. But I want to see what Antonio Callaway can bring in that Deshaun Jackson role. So that speedster getting behind the defense type thing, because I know Deshaun had the one long touchdown reception of 58, I think it was, and I think he had another long gain or two. So if you can get Callaway behind the Saints defense in the way that Jackson was able to do it, you might have something there. And that's not saying I want them to take a bunch of targets away from Josh Gordon, who only got 3. Maybe just redistribute Jarvis Landry down to like 10, give Gordon 3 of those, and maybe just target Callaway on a couple of bombs and see if he can get behind the defense. But again, we're talking about Tyrod throwing those bombs, so I don't know how effective it's going to be.
A speedster doesn't even have to be a bomb. Let a speedster work on a slant and clear it out and create some space for him on a slant and see what he can do after he catches the ball in space.
Little Tyreek Hill action.
Yeah, I mean, look, Antonio Brown, a lot of what he does is beating guys on slants. Fast is fast. I mean, I think that it was probably good that this happened in week 1 because it brought us all back down to earth. I mean, I sat here on this show last week and for effect, I'm going to say it's for effect now, but I went full fan and called a 34-6 victory. We all let it get away from us a little bit. We talked about David Njoku like he was, Antonio Gates in his prime, and he was in drop coup this week and, couldn't hang on to the ball. And we talked about Josh Gordon coming back and dominating, and he got 3 targets and was a non-factor for the most part. And we talked about Callaway all preseason, who didn't even get a target. We talked about a revamped running game with Carlos Hyde, who was atrocious. When you look at the per carry average, I think it was 2.8.
It was 2.8, but I'm not.
He was better in the second half. I'm not going to put it on Carlos.
I'm not going to put that on Carlos.
But the running game was atrocious. The running game was ineffective. You did not, except for one drive, have an effective running game.
That's on Todd Haley.
And Tyrod Taylor was abysmal, abominable, deplorable. I'm running out of adjectives, but it was terrible, and it brought us back down to earth. So we head into New Orleans. And this is where the Browns throw you that curveball and the bizarro Browns show up. You never know. You never know what to expect with this team. I expect that it will be better. I don't know that the result is going to be better because in the end, I don't know if you can hold Drew Brees down enough. And we're not going to get into predictions, but they're going to be better because they can't be worse. It's insane to say because they got a tie, but I don't think ultimately they can be worse next week on offense than they were this week.
I am going to have to pat myself on the back for a second, though. I did pick 2 of the 3 Browns touchdowns correctly. I did say Carlos Hyde was going to run one in and Josh Gordon was going to have a touchdown reception. So, boom. But yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And we'll, hopefully we can talk more about this on the live show this week. But yeah, I mean, this is an intriguing spot for me because the Browns did hang with a team that many are considering to make a deep run into the AFC playoffs this year in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they tied. So we did not lose to a team that everybody thinks is going to go deep into the AFC playoffs. But on the other side of things, we were gifted a lot of the things that helped us stay in that game. So I'm torn because this is the type of game where, like you said, the Browns do this stupid thing where they just come out and they play really, really well. But on the other side of things, this is also one of those huge, everybody got they got their hopes up. We tied the first game, and this is one of those come back to earth moments where they could also get blown out. Like I think it's either going to be what you said, like where they just shock everybody or they get blown out. I don't see this game being anywhere in between, but we'll talk about that more hopefully on the live show. But Scott, do you have anything else from the Steelers game, or do we want to go ahead and wrap this up?
Just one more thing. Hugh, it would be okay for you to do something to help your team win next week instead of at the end of it saying the team didn't lose in spite of your best efforts.
Well, on that note, as usual, everybody, we want to thank you for listening in to the OBR Straight Talk podcast. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe everywhere that podcast can be found because we're there. Leave your comments, do all of that stuff that you're supposed to do for podcasts to make us look and sound awesome. Until next time, go Browns. And like we said, keep your eyes out. Might be a live show coming in the near future.